Hi, my name is Michael, and in this video we're going to cover 15 new features in the Fig 2.0 release. Before we dive in, here's a quick overview of what Fig is and how it works. So Fig is a free, open source, centralized configuration management solution for .NET applications. It consists of three main components. There's an API, which talks to a database. There's a web application, which is a Blazor front-end single-page application, which you use for managing your settings. And there's a Fig client NuGet package, which can then be embedded in your application and used to communicate with the Fig API and provide real-time updates to settings. Getting started is really simple. You just install the client NuGet package in your application, and then you register Fig as a configuration provider within your program.cs file. There's a few things to configure here, such as the client name and the secret providers that you intend on using. And then you also need to register Fig with the DI container so it can register some background services. As part of the registration, you will also specify a settings class. This can be called anything, but it needs to extend the settings base. And then you can have any number of public properties, which are the configuration settings for your application. Each of these settings needs to have a setting attribute above it. And this attribute tells Fig that this setting is managed by Fig. And their setting can have a text description, and that description can just be a string, or it can be driven from a Markdown file that's embedded in the application, allowing you to share settings or share documentation between Fig and some documentation source driven from your repository. There's a whole range of other attributes that are available, which can customize the way that Fig works. For example, we've got a validation attribute, which applies validation. You've got a valid values one, which will give you a drop down. There's an advanced one, which hides settings within the UI by default. There's a secret one that will handle that setting as a secret value, and a whole range of other ones. Check out the website for details of all the different attributes available. Once set up and with a few environment variables in place, you can start your application and it'll automatically register with the Fig API, and your settings will be available within the Fig web interface. The settings appear in the list down the side here, and each setting can be updated and then saved and pushed back out to the API. There's a whole range of other capabilities built within Fig, such as audit logs, showing a list of all the events that have happened. We've got lists of connected clients, connected applications to the system, import export capabilities, possibility of adding webhooks, a time machine facility for saving backups, scheduling, lookup tables, and much more. So let's have a bit of a look at the new settings that are within Fig 2.0. So the most significant new feature is a feature called health checks. So Fig now integrates with ASP.NET Core's built-in health check feature, and this allows applications to report their health status based on their own internal status and any dependent services such as message buses and databases. Fig can call this or calls this health check internally on every poll, and then it displays the results in the UI. So you can see here for this ASP.NET, it's healthy. And then we have a roll-up summary at the top here showing that there's at least one that is unhealthy. On the connected clients page, we can drill down even more and we can see a breakdown of the different components that are included within that health check. And this is quite useful. We get a message to see exactly why an application may or may not be healthy. Feature number 2 is the Fig configuration health check. You can see here that one of the components of this health check is the Fig configuration health check. This health check is driven by a few factors. The first are these validation attributes that we have above the settings. So a validation attribute can be included, but it can also be excluded using the some options provided by the attribute. Fig also calls the get validation errors method, and this allows users to configure up more complex validation rules that might involve multiple settings at a time, and can return any errors that are here, and that will trigger the health check. So the regular validation attribute is regular expression based. So it's quite useful for validating strings, but it's a little bit limited when it comes to other data types like integers. So new feature number 3 in Fig 2.0 is some additional validation attributes which work well with integers. So for example, if I was to do, I have a number here, and we add that one to the setting. We have new attributes here, such as validate greater than and a number. We have validate less than and a number. And we also have validate is between, where you provide a lower and a higher number. And this gives you a lot more flexibility and avoids you having to write a complex regular expression to validate numbers. In addition, there's also a validation attribute for connection strings, a validate SQL Server connection string, and this can once again help you save you from writing a complex regular expression yourself. Feature number 4 is custom actions. Custom actions are let you trigger an application code in your application from within Fig. And this can be really useful in cases where you need a simple user interface to trigger an action, such as migrating a database, running a scheduled task, sort of ad hoc, or alternatively, it can be a way of retrieving information, such as migration information or diagnostics data. Once it's implemented, you'll see it here in the user interface below the settings, and I've got a couple of examples here. When executing, you can select auto, which will pick the next instance, or you can choose a specific run session and run it on that run session. So if we execute this one, we get a status that it's been sent to the server, and then sent to the client. The client then executes it, and we come back with some results. Results can just be text-based, like this one, or we can return text or a data table, which is a more complex result, and we can see here a data table was returned. Actually implementing it is a matter of just registering with the DI container. So if we take this here, I have an I custom action registered, and I custom action is defined within the NuGet package. And if we have a look at our failover action, the interface is as simple as having a name, button name, description, settings used, and execute. And inside the implementation, it's up to you to do something here, and then return back the result. There is a result builder here that assists you when building more complex results. Feature number 5 is scheduling. So scheduling is a way to defer the application of settings changes to a later date, or alternatively to automatically revert them back to a previous value. The scheduling feature might be useful during, for example, where you have a change window that you want to apply changes at a particular time, or if you just want to revert back a temporary change that you want to make, such as increasing the verbosity of a log, and then have that automatically revert back to a previous value. To use the scheduling, you simply make changes to settings, 1 or more settings. If we go 2 here in this case, and we hit the save button, and then on this save changes dialog, we have an option down here to schedule the changes. We can schedule them immediately and never revert them, which is the default, or we can choose to schedule them in a certain time period or at a certain time period. And the same goes for reverting. Once we hit save, the values are scheduled, and we can see because I've deferred the application, they've reverted back to their previous values, And we've got a little tooltip here telling us that it is scheduled to change to overbose at a later point. We can always come across to the scheduling tab, and we can see all the settings that have been scheduled to be changed. We can remove the schedule so it won't be applied, or we can edit it to change when it will be executed at. It is possible to combine a schedule and a revert within the same, and in that case you'll only see one line item in the scheduling table until the main scheduling's happened, and then the revert item will appear in there. Feature number 6 is Time Machine. Time Machine has been improved in Fig 2.0. It essentially takes backups when things occur inside Fig and allows you to revert back to the settings as they were at that point in time when the backup was taken. And this happens automatically behind the scenes. We can see here we can also add notes to it. We can download it, and that comes as basically an export, or we can apply it, which will set the settings back to the state they were when this checkpoint was taken. In Fig 2.0, this now runs asynchronously. So previously, the backup was taken when you hit the save button, and that could take a long time. And so now it runs asynchronously, checking every 10 minutes and then taking a backup if any changes have been made. Feature 7 is Quick Search. So it's now even easier in Fig 2.0 to quickly locate a setting that you want in the environment. You can use the Alt-F shortcut, or you can click the little search icon at the top here, and that brings up the search dialog. And then I can start typing, and I'll be presented with a list of results of settings. Selecting one of these items will swap to the client and highlight the setting in question. There's a whole search syntax here, which is shown in the shortcuts. So by default, it will search for the client name, setting name, and instance. But you can also use C, S, D, I, or V to search for different aspects of the setting. You can combine multiple words. So I can do C SQL, for example, and then pass, and then string, and I'll only get one result. So each space gives me a token, and then I can get the search result. Feature number 8 is CSV Import Export from data grids. Often these data grids can contain lots of data, and so Fig 2.0 adds the ability to export it to CSV, make some changes, and then import the result back in. If I hit the export button, it exports it out to a file, and then I can modify that file by adding some extra lines. If we add a query 2 here, and we save this file, and then we import it back in, we can see that the extra row gets added in there. This is still just modified, so you still need to save the changes as you would if you'd added these manually. Number 9 is performance improvements. So this is technically not a new feature as such, but one big focus of Fig 2.0 has been performance. And there's been some significant improvement in the initial load time when you log into the application. In some testing of around 20 clients with over 100 settings, the login time went from 12 seconds down to 3. And there are 3 main reasons why this happened. So the first is that we are now asynchronously loading the client descriptions, and client descriptions could be quite large due to embedded images. We're also compressing the data between the web and the API, and we've got multi-threaded decryption of the setting data happening on the server side. Feature 10 is secret providers. So in Fig 1.0, there was the possibility to specify a secret provider, which basically gives you a client secret, which you need to use to communicate with the API. And in Fig.1.0, there was DP API environment variable. We'd had a Docker secret and a command line option for providing the secret. And those options are still available in Fig 2.0. but we've also added Azure, Google, and AWS secret providers. The secret provider method now is as part of this registration, and each one is its own NuGet package. So if you're upgrading from version 1 to version 2, you'll need to add a couple of NuGet packages to restore the previous functionality. And the really great thing here is that this is extensible. So there is a base class that you need to extend, and then you can essentially implement your own secret providers for whatever platform that you're using. Feature number 11 is environment-specific settings. So it's now possible to add an environment-specific attribute to any setting. And when that's added, it'll be excluded, or you can have an option to make it excluded from an export. So for example, if you come over here to Import Export, we can exclude environment-specific settings. And this can be really handy for settings like connection strings that would be different between environments, and therefore you don't want to export those and move them between environments. You can easily exclude those in one go. There are also a number of other improvements to exports. So we have a new Changeset Export, and this is feature number 12. So a Changeset Export is essentially a filtered export where you compare a previous export to a new export and see what is different, and the change set is only the differences. So for example, if I was to perform an export now and then bring that in to we've got that here. And if I go back then and make a change, save that change, and then we go back to Import Export and we pick it, Changeset Export, and we pick that one, and then we do the export. Then our Changeset Export should only be that one single file. If we bring it across, it's just that one single file, because that's the only thing that's different between the two exports. In addition, it's possible to now export only or a select number of clients rather than all clients. So that's now available, and you can select multiple ones. Markdown exports have been improved. This is feature 13. This is a FIG report, exports as Markdown, and now we can also include setting analysis within this Markdown export. And this adds a few sections which can provide feedback and suggestions on how you can improve the configuration of your settings, such as where groups or advanced settings might be appropriate. Feature number 14 is lookup table enhancements. So for a long time, it's been possible to specify a lookup table within your settings and then have FIG apply some drop-down values as part of your configuration. So if we have a look at this, we could do here have drop-down values 1, 2, 3, etc. But now as part of FIG 2.0, it's possible to specify not just a key value pair, but a key only. And that will give us a drop-down over here with just the values. And that sort of gives greater flexibility to the lookup tables feature. Of course, if I remove these lookup tables, if they didn't exist, and we go back to the settings and we refresh the page, then we will see that these become just regular strings and integer settings. Feature number 15 is opinionated category colors. So it's always been possible to specify a category color and a category name for your settings, and you'll get a little bar down the side indicating that that's the category, and it helps group settings together. But what we found is that when you have multiple teams working on different applications, you can end up with inconsistent colors and naming between applications. As a result, it's still possible to specify categories the old way, but there is a new set of predefined categories, which will hopefully meet most use cases. So for example, you can specify database, business logic, Elasticsearch, etc. And if you specify that, then the color and the text is predefined and you don't need to do anything to make that happen. So that covers all the major new features in Fig 2.0. There's many smaller improvements and bug fixes as well. So make sure you check out the release notes or visit figsettings.com for full details. This release does include a number of breaking changes if you're migrating from a 1.x version. So check out the migration guide on the website for details. Thanks for watching.